Thank you to Symbiosis and Council of Europe for inviting me here to speak on this issue. So my name is Abhulimen. I am the Advocacy Officer at Generation 2.0 for Rights, Equality and Diversity. And I think in order to have a discussion today on democratic representation in Greece, I feel it's really important to have an understanding of where we are today and how we got there. First and foremost, I'd like to frame the conversation today in terms of who has the right and who doesn't to participate, and in terms of voting. So who has the right to vote and who has the right to run for office. Because I think it's really important, if we're going to speak about democratic representation, to speak about who's eligible to participate on that level. Because I think a lot can be said for, obviously, immigrant organizing and participating in other ways. But the conversation, I think it's high time the conversation starts to focus on actual democratic representation within all ranges of society. So currently, according to Greek legislation, only Greek citizens have the right to vote and run for office. Okay, so why? In 2010, for the first time in Greek history, under the law 3838, immigrants obtained the right to vote as well as the right to run for office. Basically to stand for election for very specific council seats and in the local government and municipal election. And this was under very specific preconditions that had to do with their years of legal stay, having sufficient knowledge of the Greek language, and etc. So unfortunately, they were only able to exercise this right in the 2010 election because certain articles of that law, 3838, were ruled unconstitutional, and the article that had to do with the right to vote was one of them. So today, the conversation hasn't moved much further. The immigrant vote was recently tabled in Parliament as part of the current revision of the Constitution, but it didn't pass. And therefore, any conversation we are to have today about democratic representation has to do with the representation of Greek citizens with migrant and refugee background. Within this context, my input today has to do with the work of our organization, so Generation 2.0. First and foremost, it's important to understand that when we speak of the Greek citizens currently who have the right to participate on that level, so to vote and be eligible to stand for election, we are talking about, when we look at the migrant family, we're talking about either the first generation who've become naturalized citizens or the second generation. Now, the second generation has a very specific history, and I'd like to give you an overview of that because it's important to understand how new and recent all of this is. And why the conversations are still not there. So basically, grassroots activism is what led to the founding of Generation 2.0. And today we focus on themes of social solidarity, civic participation, political activism, and obviously representation, exactly because of that history. And the intent in a lot of the work that we do has to do with visibility and recognition. Why? Because sadly, that is where the conversation still is in Greece today. We're still focusing on visibility and recognition. In relation to the second generation, we came together as far back as 2006, organizing. Informal organizing, as most of you here will probably understand what that means. At the time, the clear mission was to secure the rights of the second generation because at the time we did not have access to Greek citizenship. We were not entitled to be Greek citizens. So this precarious legal state, kind of like legal limbo, virtually meant no rights, okay? And which of course, understanding that context means social exclusion, and discrimination in a range of areas. So finally, after years of grassroots activism, campaigning, advocacy work, community organizing, lobbying, all of that, in 2010, the law 3838 was passed, which was the first law that granted access to Greek citizenship for the children of migrants and refugees born in Greece. As I mentioned previously, that is the same law that was ruled unconstitutional 2 years later. So in 3 years later, in 2013, the Council of State ruled some articles. One was the right to vote for immigrants to participate in local elections, and some articles had to do with the citizenship for the second generation. In July of 2014, we were able to get that reinstated with Law 4332, so that covered the legislative gap. So based on these two laws, and according to the statistical data which we as an organization requested from the Ministry of Interior, the majority of Greek citizenship acquisitions due to being born or having schooled in Greece have been recorded from 2016 onwards, and that has to be because of bureaucratic obstacles. Then, when you couple in the years of the gap. So basically, 2006 onwards is when the majority of second generation obtained Greek citizenship and therefore had the right to vote and to stand for election. So the election of 2019, therefore, signaled a milestone in the history of the second generation because it marked the elections where the largest number of people with varying ethnic backgrounds that were born and raised in Greece could participate. So based on the statistical data which we requested until around March 2019, that number totaled to around 46,431 people. So I say this to understand that the history is still very new, and the right to vote and be democratically represented on that level is still very new. So in terms of the work that we do, the challenge now becomes, how do we instill the understanding of the weight of our vote and the need to exercise these newly acquired political rights, and the possibility to be represented on a democratic level in a generation of young people who were never afforded that right, and who understandably might have a sense of political disenfranchisement. So how do we start having these, and that's on one level. And then the second level is, how do we start having these conversations when within Greek society we're still talking about visibility, recognition, and belonging. So there's two folds to that conversation. And obviously when we talk about, so first of all, visibility is a word I feel that gets thrown around a lot. Being visible is not just about being seen. It's also about being recognized, and that comes both on a legal, legislative level as well as societal-wise. You cannot, as a person of immigrant background, you won't necessarily envision and understand the possibility of being represented in that way when you don't see that in front of you. You don't see people participating within those structures. And why? Because we didn't actually have the right until recently. So it's a very short history. And so in our case, obviously it's not about recognizing something new. It's about recognizing a group that has already been there, but however are still not recognized within the construct of citizen. Okay, so this sense of belonging, I guess, has to do with claiming something which is not afforded, which is having access and having a say. So now you have access, technically speaking, legislative-wise, let's say, but you still don't have a say. And this is where the challenge lies, and this is where our focus is today. Our focus is, and struggle, I guess, if you want to frame it that way, is both material in terms of legal and social obstacles, which encompass the immigrant family as a whole. So the first generation, obviously, is obtaining the right to vote, because that's where we're still at. And for the second generation, it's discursive in terms of still being invisible within society. And obviously, if you're going to look at the current makeup of Greek society, it's pretty obvious that immigrants and refugees are part of that future. And it's really disheartening seeing how the anti-immigrant policies, seeing how that will impact civic engagement in the future. not just in the future, currently, and in terms of envisioning what can be. Because it's twofold. On the one hand, you have populations which are not, why would you think you can participate in that level when you're not welcome, first of all? And second of all, when the whole society doesn't even consider you as a group of people who can actually be seen on that level. Okay, so that's what we are focused on now. In 2019, in May of 2019, we rolled out our first campaign, exactly because this was the year that the majority of second generation had the right to vote, and it was a clear goal of informing. You have to understand that you have people who are voting for the first time, even though they're born and raised in this country, are voting for the first time at the age of 25, 26, 27. Not many people might even know the whole process, and there isn't that much targeted information for that group of people. Because for others, you know, voting at the age of 18 or now 17 is just kind of like a rite of passage that is just, you have people you can ask, and it's just kind of taken as for granted. So we rolled out our first campaign, and it was about informing on the voting procedures, as well as cultivating that notion of political participation, civic engagement, and obviously about, because a lot of the work we do is also geared towards us. So it was about informing about the weight of our vote, what it means for us to start participating in that way. And that, to me, is where the challenge lies, and where a lot of the focus is. We're still not yet there. I mean, hopefully the next goal is to have democratic representation, have people taking up seats within political parties, within, well, I mean, let's start local, I guess, start local, municipal seats, and then go further. Thank you.